Depression is not an illness. It is real, and it's a very serious and painful problem for those that experience it. And it is not an illness. It's a symptom. Now, if this sounds shocking or surprising to you, I understand. The conversation around mental health has been quite narrow in the past. Today, I will present a different perspective, one with connection at the center. But first, let me set the scene. I think I haven't turned it on. Mental health support in Cambodia has been severely lacking. In 2011, only 0.02% of the health budget was being spent on mental health support. Currently, there are an estimated 60 psychiatrists and 60 psychologists with a degree, master's degree, practicing. And of this 120, actually far fewer are still seeing clients. But there is hope. The interest in mental health is increasing. We have increasing numbers of psychiatrists, therapists, and coaches working in Cambodia. And there are many projects popping up with mental health as its focus. And people are starting to speak up more about their mental health journeys too. And actually, the Ministry of Health had an intention to spend 2% of the national health budget between 2016 and 2020. But the majority of these welcome shifts are still focused on a very narrow view of mental health, which is actually mental illness and absence thereof. This is a view that stems from traditional Western medicine, one that focuses on the diagnosis of illnesses based on clusters of symptoms and subsequent treatment and suppression of those symptoms. And the harmful impact of this can most obviously be seen in the depressant and antidepressant epidemic in America, where in certain segments of the population, up to 15 to 20% are on antidepressants. And yet, depression and anxiety levels remain on the rise. All signs show that this pattern is being repeated here in Cambodia, driven by the desire for easy answers, quick fixes, and pills. This approach is failing on a global scale. We have more awareness about mental health and interest in it than ever before. We have more trained professionals. The stigma is starting to go away. And yet, depression and anxiety levels remain on the rise. This points to a fundamental flaw in how we approach this topic of mental health. Let me share with you a metaphor for our approach right now. You know that if you're dehydrated, if you don't drink enough water, you get a headache. You also know that Panadol, it suppresses the headache's pain. And this is good. We don't want people to suffer pain unnecessarily. But we make a mistake if we think that the headache is the real problem. The headache is actually your body's way of letting you know that you are dehydrated. You need water, right? The problem is not that you don't have enough Panadol in your body. Our approach to mental health is like this. Instead of feeding people water, we're training people to diagnose headaches as an illness and prescribing Panadol to suppress the pain. Instead of talking about what a well-hydrated society looks like, we're trying to spread the awareness of the different types of headaches that exist. Celebrating when people talk about their about the fact that they have headaches too. And the current method is failing at a global scale, right? We have more awareness than ever before about mental health. We have more trained professionals, and stigma is starting to go away. But we have higher rates of depression and anxiety disorders than ever before. And it's obvious if you think about it. We've just been popping Panadol when what we really needed was to drink water. So then, what is causing our headaches? What's the water that will cure our dehydration? If these mental health issues, illnesses, are pointing to a sign or symptoms, then what is it trying to tell us about what is wrong inside of us and the world that we live in? My grand statement number 2, the root level cause of mental unhealth is trauma, and trauma is disconnection. And I'm not saying that every single one of the 300 plus illnesses in the diagnosis book is caused only by trauma, but if we go to the root level of many of these, there is one thing that sticks out, and that's trauma. And we just don't talk about it enough. When we do, we don't talk about it accurately enough. Gabor Mate, a doctor and a worldwide expert on trauma, mental health, and addiction, writes that trauma is the invisible force that shapes our lives. It shapes the way we live, the way we love, and the way we make sense of the world. According to him, citing his personal and professional experience, as well as many academic research, at the heart of many of the following is trauma. Addictions, depression, anxiety, ADHD, even physical illnesses such as chronic stomach aches and autoimmune disease. So then, what is trauma? A good metaphor for trauma is a deep psychic wound. So imagine you have a deep cut on your hand, and after some time it heals, so it's not bloody anymore, it's not open. But years after, you'd still touch it, and it's still sensitive, it still hurts. Likewise, our trauma results us reacting in the present to harmless stimuli as a result of what happened in the past. Trauma isn't what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you as a result of what happened. And because of this, it continues to impact our lives today, impacting how we relate to ourselves, others, and the world around us. Trauma is the disconnection from our authentic selves, what I call intrapersonal connection, disconnection from other people, what I call interpersonal connection, and the world around us, what I call transpersonal connection. Disconnection at the intrapersonal level. Due to trauma, we're disconnected from our emotions and our bodies. And so our bodies have a natural ability to process trauma, but when we're disconnected from it, we lose that ability, and so the trauma remains stuck. We also lose the ability to self-regulate our nervous system, so that when we're triggered, we can't calm ourselves down, but instead react from it. We're disconnected from parts of us that we have deemed to be undesirable. Our sensitive side, our vulnerable side, our masculinity, our femininity, our aggression, and our sexuality. And you can see how this will have a very negative impact on our overall health. Now, looking at the interpersonal level, this connection gets in the way of us forming nurturing and co-regulating relationships, instead resulting in suspicion, defensiveness, reactiveness, and judgment. Imagine a living life like this, where you're always on guard, because you're afraid of other people's negative intentions. In your personal and professional lives, and in your families, where you're afraid of being criticized, judged, and shamed. Who can relate to that a little bit? And this has a lasting impact on our mental health. Let me share another example. We now know that addiction is primarily not a biochemical thing. It's a social issue. People with strong, nurturing relationships just don't develop addictions. And we also know that addictions put a strain on the relationships that do exist. This is an example of trauma leading to more trauma. Now, at the transpersonal level, so this is about a sense of connection to the world, nature, and having a sense of meaning in your lives. We are said to be experiencing a crisis of meaning in the world right now, where many perceive life as meaningless. And this is very important. Sense of meaning has been shown to be the most important driver of satisfaction, well-being, and even longevity. A real powerful example of this is demonstrated in Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, where he talks about how when prisoners in concentration camps lost a sense of connection to meaning in life, they're more likely to die. This disconnection to nature is responsible for the ecological crisis that we see today. Mass extinctions, climate change. And we're already seeing how climate change is causing further trauma in many populations around the world. And the disconnection to the world, the separation from the other, results in the wars that we see. When we perceive the world as meaningless, a cold, meaningless place, we do things that hurt others. Trauma is disconnection, and disconnection at all of these levels perpetuate further trauma and resulting mental health issues. And the trauma is so real and pervasive in Cambodia, where 20 to 30% of the population were killed in the Khmer Rouge genocide. And we know that this trauma is passed on through generations. I don't exaggerate one bit when I say that every single one of us in this room is brushed by trauma. It impacts us all to different degrees, but it does impact us. In Cambodia, it's particularly present even in families, workplaces, culture, as well as the behavior and performance of the workforce, which is something I'll return to later. So, if trauma is at the root of mental unhealth, mental disease, and trauma is disconnection, then connection is the path to healing and thriving. Rather than solely focusing on the diagnosis and treatment of symptoms, we need to go to the root cause level and do things that foster connection. We need to help people connect back to their authentic selves, their emotions, their bodies, the parts of themselves that they repressed. We need to help them form vulnerable, authentic relationships with other people, and help them gain a sense of meaning in their lives. And one of the best ways to do this is by connecting to nature, going into nature, which has been the source of inspiration for transpersonal connection for millennia. And as we do this, we need to keep in mind that the way that society is run now is based on disconnection. We have an economic system and an education system which doesn't value humanity and focuses only on intellect, academic achievement, and finances. We have a food industry that is chemically engineered to disconnect us from our natural bodies. We have fragmented families getting smaller and more disconnected than ever before. We have urbanization, which has been shown to decrease the sense of connectedness between people. And how we use the internet with TikTok and porn. We need to foster connection at all of these levels, and not just in one-on-one professional settings like the ones that therapists have with their clients, the ones that coaches like me have with our clients. There is just not enough of us to combat the recurring trauma in the whole country. We need to train parents on how to raise kids in a nurturing, safe, loving manner, rather than one of criticism and shaming, which is something I believe someone else is talking about today. We need education systems that integrates the whole person, rather than only looking at a tiny part of them, like the intellect or academic achievement. We need humane workplaces that foster connection, that values humanity, instead of only the bottom line. And we need city planning and social policies that connect us back to each other, rather than disconnect us. And now, why is this important? Because mental health and trauma is the biggest lever that the country has to unlocking the potential of Cambodia. We need to change how we speak about mental health. So currently the way we talk about it is that, yes, people are suffering from mental health, and it's bad that people suffer. It's the ethical, moral argument. And this is good, and it's valid, and it's noble. And it's only half the story. This is the reason why policymakers aren't interested in it. That's why they're only pouring a tiny fraction of their money into this. But the truth is this: far more than coding skills, STEM, or critical thinking, trauma and mental health is the biggest lever that we have to unlocking the potential of the nation. Why? Because trauma has been shown to decrease creativity, increase reactivity, decrease EQ, decrease IQ, judgment, decision making, relationship building, all of the skills that we need to thrive in the new economy, Industry 4.0, is being inhibited by trauma. Hands up who's ever driven a car. Yeah, and keep your hands up if that car had handbrakes. And keep your hands up if you've ever driven a car with the handbrake still up. I've done it too. What's that like? It's frustrating, right? You put the foot on the gas and you can't get the speed up, and actually it damages the car in the long run, and you're wasting very expensive fuel. Not taking trauma and mental health into account when you're talking about development of the country is like driving with the handbrakes on. Having a traumatized workforce is fine if you're running an economy based on garment factories, not if you want a workforce equipped to deal with the volatile and uncertain environment that we live in today, not if we want a country equipped for Industry 4.0. We're at a critical point in time. The world is in crisis. We have a mental health pandemic. We have climate crisis. We have impending war and a financial system that is being destabilized. And yet the opportunity has never been greater. We have more interest in this area than ever before. With proven ways on better ways to approach this topic. Let me offer up a client story, and for confidentiality purposes, I have mixed in the details of several people, and I've used a fake name. Anne suffered from bouts of depression. She suffered mood swings, swinging from people-pleasing to uncontrollable anger. She was restless and had difficulty focusing on anything. She was always looking out for signs of danger, and she overate, disconnected from her body, and was therefore overweight. I wonder what labels you might give Anne. Depression, bipolar, anxiety, ADHD, personality disorders. Anne was abused as a child. And because of this trauma, this impacted her behaviors her whole life and put her in situations that recreated further trauma, abusive relationships in her personal and professional life. Over her adult life, Anne had seen several psychologists and therapists. Unfortunately for her, they were trained only in the old model, and she was given various labels, but no lasting transformation. When she came to see me, I saw someone disconnected from her authentic, magnificent self. In our coaching relationship, in a safe environment, we started to build back her connection with her body, allowing her to start processing some of the trauma that's been stored there. We worked on her connection with her emotions, allowing her to feel it rather than just reacting from it. She learned to pay attention to how the emotions presented in the body. We also worked on reconnecting her to parts of her that she'd lost. Her playfulness, her sexy side, her ability to be in the center of attention. We reconnected her back to her values, what's really important to her. And we worked on building authentic relationships, going past the barriers that she built to keep herself safe. We explored what it meant to have meaning in her life and what role she wanted to have in the world. The result: reduced anxiety and mood swings, relief of depressive symptoms. She increased the connection to her body and actually started losing weight and eating much healthier. She's also reporting a deeper clarity of thought rather than the restlessness and the absent-mindedness of before. She's beginning to tap into her innate wisdom, and she's a compassionate listener to her friends and family, improving their lives in turn. It's an example of connection leading to healing, leading to more connection, leading to healing. Picture a world where you feel connected to your authentic self, all parts of you, and you feel accepted for it. Where you can connect authentically to the authentic selves of others around you. Where all of us have a sense of meaning in the world and know what part we wish to play. What might that be like? That's the Cambodia we can build together. And I just want to invite us to try something. Reach out and grab the hands of those next to you. If you're willing, it's okay if you're not. And allow your hearts to open. And feel the connection to those next to you. And as you do this, allow yourself to feel the vulnerability of this connection and noticing any barriers that come up, the defensiveness. Feel the connection to those next to you and all of us in this room. What would Cambodia be like if we had more of this? That's the country we can build together if we put connection at the heart of mental health.